invite you to pause for a moment and maybe pause the video so that you can pray for our brothers and sisters in Tonga who are struggling at the moment as a result of the tsunami. You may like to include in your prayers our brothers and sisters of our First Peoples nations as well, as we pause for a day of mourning, as we remember the impact of colonisation on them. There are many people in this world that are struggling and trying to come to terms with so many things. So I invite you to pause the video at the moment. Pray for them. Pray for yourselves that God will speak to you and help you to see your way forward to be a blessing in such times of struggle. Well, welcome back. In the newspapers of late, there's been lots of discussion about COVID deniers and conspiracy theorists, and also exploring how do you relate to someone who you may come across who may be a conspiracy theorist. One thing that it seems that all commentators and people with insight seem to agree on is there's no point arguing the case with them. Argument gets you nowhere. If anything, all it does is alienates you in that time. You see, truth and facts are just not something of interest. Well, truth and facts is from your side of things. From their side of things, it may be a different story. And what we're told, the best course of action is to have a listening gentleness about us, with gentle humour and a loving spirit, where we have boundaries that are clear. And if we find we get caught up in arguments at the time, take a moment to pause, to step back, to reaffirm those boundaries in a gentle way, but to continue to express love and compassion. And over time, there may be opportunity to explore questions or issues with an openness that may not otherwise have been there, as that trust is re-established. It's a bit like coming to faith, in fact. It's a rare thing indeed. I wouldn't say never though, but it's a rare thing indeed for anyone to come to faith through argument, particularly over ideas or thoughts. Belief is something which just doesn't seem to, you don't get there through argument normally. It seems to be through a trusting relationship where people see it lived and they start to explore with you what life might mean. And so they ask questions from that position of trust and insight. Teachers know this in regard to teaching children. They know that at the basis of good education is building rapport and trusting relationships. People obtain insight when they have a good rapport with their teacher, their coach, their counsellor, or their preacher. There's the old joke which expresses this quite beautifully. And while we might point the finger and make fun of them in this time, about psychologists, in fact, and it's simply, how many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? And the answer? Just the one. So long as the light bulb wants to be changed. Well, it's a bit like that when we're going to grow and gain insight. You see, learning, epiphanies and insight only normally come when we're willing to learn and grow. They come at a point of being ready to adjust, to change, and to see. Epiphanies are major insights that invite us to change our life and the way we see the world. And when they come, we need a supportive community to help us to grow and to change. In our readings for today from Nehemiah and Luke, new things are made known. Many obtain insights in this set time, but not everyone who is hearing those and seeing those insights. With the Nehemiah story, those with prior understanding need to mix with the listeners to interpret and to explain the readings. There needed to be a translation and a grounding of the word. And in our reading from Luke, of which we only get a segment of the story this week, we notice that there is a recognition of something momentous happening. The events leading up to them point to that happening on that day. But the people just don't quite see it. And they're not quite ready to change, and so the challenge to their ways is too much. Some other recent stories you may remember over the last few weeks in our worship told the story of the prophetess Anna, the wise men meeting with Jesus and the family, and there's a sign that Jesus does of turning water into wine. These are epiphanies that are offered to those around, but not everyone recognises them. The epiphanies are gifted, but they're not always received. An epiphany requires an open mind and a heart on our part. We need to be willing and prepared to let it change us. We need to listen and observe and respond. And to receive an epiphany, we need to be on a journey of learning, of faith and of hope. When a new thing comes our way, we need to be open to embrace rather than to react. This is not to say all the new should automatically be accepted, but rather we consider it openly. We let the new engage in conversation with the old and the traditional. We need to let both challenge and examine each other. This has been particularly evident during this COVID pandemic. As a cluster at this time, we've been asked to consider our past, our present, and our future. To consider our life and to see what is needful. And it's easy in that consideration to want to return to the old ways, the good old days of large Sunday schools, full church services, and lots of people just desperate to get in and to help and participate in the leadership of our communities. Those days as we knew them are gone. The future is uncertain, but the Spirit is leading us on. We need to identify the important things we need to take with us on the journey. And according to Luke in the commissioning of the disciples, there's not a lot that we have to take. And then we need to be open to where the Spirit leads. A trusting relationship with God is essential, and a supporting Christian community is empowering.